I never really liked playing cards. I didn't even like Uno when I was a kid. Some of my friends tried to teach me how to play poker when I was in college, but I could never understand the rules, so I never bothered to learn which hand wins or how to play Texas Hold'em or whatever it's called. It just didn't hold any interest for me. I got tired of giving my money away to my ruthless friends, so I stopped playing altogether. My wife, Kathy, however, loved to play poker and was amazingly good at it. She competed in several local tournaments and did well, but usually played with a regular group of her friends. This group met once or twice a month at the home of friends Larry and Sandy. They had a beautiful townhouse in the suburbs. Notice that I said her friends. Katie had known them since college, and Sandy was her roommate. The group consisted of Larry and Sandy, who both played poker, my wife Kathy, Paul, Brian, Terry, and Mark. Present but not playing were myself, Paul's wife Mary, and Brian's wife Allison. We usually sat in the living room and watched TV. Once upon a time, another guy named Wes played with them, but he was caught cheating and kicked out of the group. I didn't mind Katie playing poker, but like I said, those were her friends, not mine. Mary and Allison were fine. We even became good friends, but the others weren't particularly interesting to me. I would never communicate with them of my own free will. I can't say I didn't like them, with the exception of Mark. Mark was a complete jerk, and I frankly didn't like him. Terry and Mark were bachelors. Terry was quiet and unassuming and didn't seem to be very good at poker. Mark was a real arrogant guy, and if I ran into him on the street, I would most likely ignore him. He was loud, annoying, and opinionated. I argued with him more than once and only tolerated him because he was part of my wife's poker group, and we only met at poker nights. The only real problem with poker nights was that they made Katie extremely competitive. If she lost that night, she was in a foul mood the next day. I told her more than once that she was taking it too seriously, but she brushed it off. Lately, she's been trying to make poker night a weekly thing, but I didn't want to spend that much time with these people. Luckily, Mary and Allison felt the same way, so the weekly poker nights didn't happen. Yet, one Saturday night, we were at Larry and Sandy's, and the usual crowd was playing. Apparently, it was a bad night for Katie. I would stop by every now and then to see if she wanted anything to drink, and she was always angry. It was already quite late. The time when they usually finished was long past, and suddenly I heard noise from the dining room where they were playing. As I walked in, I heard Mark say, "That was the bet. Don't go back on your word." Larry added, "You know the rules, Kat. If you refuse the bet, you're out of the group." Katie then said, Okay, let's do it. Now it's my turn. What's happening? Katie lost all her money and bet that she would please me in the last round. Mark said with a smile and a "fuck you" look on his face, "She lost, and now she needs to pay back." Sorry, but Katie isn't going to do this to anyone but me. Hey man, she bet and lost. Those are the rules. That's when Katie decided to start sealing her destiny. Henry, it's not a problem. I lost and I need to pay. No, Katie, what you must do is be faithful to me, and you want to pay off the bet that will result in you cheating on me. Mark, as always, justified my opinion of him as a jerk. You're here watching, so it's not really cheating. You know what, asshole? Shut your damn mouth. Believe it or not, this is not about you. Katie, come on, we're leaving. Henry, I don't want to do this, but I have to. If I don't, I'll be kicked out. I don't care if you get kicked out. I don't care if you never play poker again. Let's go. I started moving towards her. Hey guys, you're going to have to help me. Katie looked at Paul and Brian and nodded in my direction. As I approached Katie, Paul and Brian grabbed me from behind. I started to struggle and Larry came over and helped them hold me down. Are you bastards serious? Are you going to hold me while my wife pleases this idiot? Listen, said Larry, she made a bet and knew the consequences. If she refused, she would be kicked out of the group. She doesn't want to get kicked out, so she pays the bet. Then he laughed. Don't worry, Mark will never last long. While I was being held, Mark pulled his jeans and boxers down to his ankles. He really was an asshole. "Catherine, if you do this, it's over between us." I didn't shout, I spoke very calmly, using her full name. "Don't be so dramatic, Henry," she said. And she started doing it. As soon as she did this, I screamed, "Stop a second." She stopped and looked at me. "I just want to clarify, does everyone here approve of this?" Everyone in the room was silent. Mark then moved forward again and said, "Come on, he's ruining the mood." Katie continued, "Okay, stop. I can't watch this. Let me go and I'll leave." A plan began to form. I assumed it was over with Katie and I, but I needed to get back at the idiot somehow. They let me go, and I calmly walked up to Katie. I pretended to try to take off my wedding ring as I approached them. The fingers of the left hand were spread, and the right hand was clenched into a fist, trying to remove the wedding ring. Katie was kneeling to my left, looking determined. Mark was to my right and just grinning. As I approached them, I told Katie, "I told you that if you did this, it was all over between us." I was now standing right next to them, looking down at Katie. The fingers of my left hand were spread apart, as if I was trying to remove the ring. My right hand was clenched into a fist as I pulled the ring. "You did it, Catherine, and with a jerk like this." When I said the word "this," I slammed the back of my right fist right into Mark's nose. As his jeans and boxers were pulled down to his ankles, he fell onto his ass and then completely onto his back. He landed on the floor between the dining table and the large china cabinet. This was already further than I had planned, but I was very angry and continued to improvise. Katie fell on her butt, and I was now standing at Mark's feet, looking down at him. To my right was the dining table, to my left was the closet. The table was quite large and seated 8 people comfortably, with 3 chairs on each side. The cabinet was huge, at least 6 feet long. The base was about 30 inches high and made of oak, with many drawers and doors. The top part stood on the base and rose another 40 inches. I grabbed the very top of the cabinet, knowing I couldn't turn it over, but maybe I could scare Mark. The base alone weighed about 300 pounds with everything inside, and the top was a wooden frame with glass doors filled with decorative china, Hummel figurines, snow globes, and other things they had collected. Unfortunately for Mark, Larry never secured the top of the cabinet to the bottom properly. When I pulled on it, the top of the cabinet tipped over. While I didn't plan on dropping the cabinet on Mark, I liked how it all came together. When the cabinet collapsed and landed, it sounded like an explosion. Luckily for Mark, there wasn't enough space between the base of the cabinet and the table for the cabinet to fall completely on top of him. Instead, the bottom of the cabinet remained on the base, while the top fell onto the dining table. It seemed to spread over Mark. Unfortunately for Mark, everything that was displayed in the closet slid forward and broke the glass doors of the closet. He was covered with shards of glass and pieces of broken doors, and then all the objects from the closet fell into glass shards. He received hundreds of cuts. Everyone in the room froze, stunned by what was happening. I was still acting on improvisation, so, feigning concern, I walked around the table, walked up to his head, and picked up a couple of playing cards from the table along the way. He said loudly, "Don't touch him, call an ambulance." As I approached his head, I leaned low so only he could hear me and said, "Fuck you, asshole. I hope you bleed. But if not, come find me later and we'll talk about this again. By the way, there's a hell of a lot of glass here. I wouldn't move too much if I were you." With that, I took the 2 cards I had picked up earlier and threw them under his shoulder. Sandy came out of the kitchen saying, "The ambulance is on the way, should be here in 5 minutes. Should we call the police?" Katie and I answered at the same time. She said, "No," and I said, "Absolutely." Kathy wasn't stupid. She knew that if the police came, reports would be filed and statements would be taken. Larry was very angry. He said, "Dude, you tried to kill him and destroyed my closet. We need to call the police." Well, I didn't try to kill him, but I agree that you should call the police. Personally, I would be glad to talk to the police. The fact that you 3 held me down while my wife was pleasing another man over a loss. Isn't this similar to sex for money? Like selling a body or inducement to it? I don't know for sure, but I will definitely look into this issue. I know for sure that this is an illegal detention when you three held me, and I know that you beat me. My ribs hurt. By the time I finish my testimony, they will think that I walked in on a sex group and was afraid of becoming a victim of sexual violence. They won't believe you. Who do you think they'll believe, Larry, me, or the guy lying here with his underpants around his ankles, who isn't married to any of the women here? Maybe I'm wrong. Go ahead, call the police. The neighbors will love to hear about your party. Do it, whatever you want. Please call the police. I'll go outside to meet the ambulance. I walked back to the table where Katie was back on her knees looking at Mark. I sat down next to her, and this time I actually took off my wedding ring and threw it into the broken glass next to Mark's head. You know what, Catherine? I don't think I'll need it anymore. If you want, you can take it out of the glass. What is it? Katie looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, What? There, next to his head. Are those extra cards? Wait, the guy you gave up your marriage for cheated? What? Are you fucking kidding me? Mark, you fucking bastard. I almost cheated on my husband and you cheated. I didn't argue about almost cheated and cheated. I thought it would be later. Mark was still unable to speak because of the glass on his hands that covered his face. Stay here, Catherine. I'll go meet the ambulance, I said. They should be arriving any minute. I'll let you know when they arrive. I left the house, got into the car, and drove away. 2 blocks later, I passed an ambulance, which was driving slowly, trying to make out house numbers. I drove past and went home. I entered the house and began to pack my things, expecting the police to show up at any moment. But they never arrived. I packed a small suitcase and a couple of duffel bags and started throwing in the things I would need for the next few days. As I was zipping up my suitcase, I heard the front door open and Katie started calling out to me. Henry, where are you? I didn't pay attention to her. Henry? Henry, where are you? I left the bedroom with 2 duffel bags and a suitcase. Oh, there you are. Henry, what are you doing? Well, I'm going to do what Mark did. What do you mean? I'm going to find an easy-to-get girl to please me with. Henry, you don't have to go anywhere, hell. You know I can do this for you if you want. I'm not easy to get. Oh, I know you would do that to me. To me, Mark, Larry, and Brian, or are you limited to married men? And you actually did it instead of a cash settlement. I'm sure that makes it easy to get. How much was the rate? Henry, stop it. I would have made the mark, but it doesn't matter what the bet was. It's the principle. It's just something. I wasn't going to sleep with him. Besides, you stopped me. Did I stop you? She ignored the question and tried to change the subject. I was able to talk them out of calling the police, and I retrieved your ring from the broken glass. Like I said, I don't care. I think they should have called the police. Hell, I could have killed him. Maybe I should go to the police station and confess to my crimes. No, Henry, bad idea. We'll just pay for what you broke and... Hell no, I won't give them a dime. When's the next poker night? Not for a couple of weeks. Mark won't be invited back, so you don't have to worry about him. 2 weeks will give us time to get over what happened. Henry, where are you going? By the time she finished her sentence, I was already out the door. By the time I got into the car, she was standing in the doorway shouting after me. I didn't pay attention to it and left. I drove to the next town and found a Motel 6 where I rented a room for the night. I turned off the phone and lay on the bed all night, looking at the ceiling. I finally fell asleep around 5 in the morning and slept until 10. I got up, showered, and then went to the front desk to extend my stay until Wednesday. I turned on the phone and saw a dozen missed calls from Katie and another dozen from Allison and Mary. There were also many messages from Katie explaining why she had to do what she did and how it meant nothing to us. She apologized for what happened, but still tried to justify it and insisted it was just nothing. I responded with just one message. suggesting that I forward all her messages to her mother and see what she thought about it. Then I turned off the phone again. I sat on a park bench for 2 hours, then wandered around the mall for another hour, then sat on another bench in another park for another hour. Then I went to the supermarket, bought a bunch of junk food, and went back to my motel room, where I spent the rest of the night eating crap and researching scams on the internet. By 10, I was exhausted and went to bed. Monday morning, I went to work and tried to be productive. My boss caught me staring off into space a few times and finally asked me what was wrong. When I told him that I had serious family problems, he suggested that I take at least a couple of days off. He told me to call on Wednesday and let me know if I needed more time. By then, the workday was almost over, so I left and decided to stop by the local bar and grill for a couple of beers and something better to eat than the crap I bought at the supermarket. I didn't want to talk to anyone, so I went to the back of the restaurant and sat in a booth. Yes, this was not the most polite behavior, considering that I was alone. Anyway, after a while, two figures appeared next to me, and neither of them were the waitress. "Hey, Henry, mind if we sit down?" I ignored them and took a sip of ice-cold water. "Are you mad at us, too? What did we do?" "Nothing. You both didn't do anything," I replied in a calm, even voice. Mary and Allison sat across from me, and Allison spoke first. "Henry, if Mary and I didn't do anything, why are you mad at us? I know you don't really like the people Katie plays poker with, but I thought we were friends." "I also thought we were friends, but you didn't do anything." "But, are you seriously asking this?" "Well, you haven't done anything," I said in as harsh a tone as possible, trying not to raise my voice. "I was being held down by your husbands so that my wife could satisfy another man, and you both stood there and were silent. Such friends. At one point, before she started, I looked over and begged for someone to help stop this, and you both didn't say anything." "I didn't think she'd actually do it," Mary said. "I thought it was just a stupid joke." "I couldn't believe she actually started doing it," Allison said. "Now she feels terrible. She's afraid you'll send those messages to her mom. You wouldn't do that, would you?" "Not yet, but if necessary, I will. Everyone knows how terrible it was. We discussed it after you left, when the ambulance took Mark away. Larry and Sandy said they wouldn't call the police. You just have to pay." "Listen, Mary, I'm not going to pay anyone anything. In my opinion, Larry and Sandy actively contributed to what became Katie's gambling problem. Now, I don't blame them for her weakness, but Sandy stood by and watched, and Larry even helped hold me back while Katie was ruining our marriage so she wouldn't get kicked out of their damn poker group. Henry, she is in complete despair. Please try to forgive her," Mary begged. "I'm not sure she wants forgiveness. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. I think she wants me to apologize to her for not letting her pay off her bet." Suddenly, Allison seemed to have an idea. "What if we even the odds? What if you go out and find a girl who will do the same to you?" I answered her very slowly and reservedly, as if I were talking to a child. "Think about it. We were supposedly in a room with our friends. Then those same friends held me down so my wife could please another friend. Now, to even the odds, I need to find a woman to give me to. In fact, I was humiliated in front of all her friends, and she will just hear that I acted back. The image of her on her knees is forever etched in my memory. On the other hand, she may not even believe me if I say that. I played it off. She can just pretend it didn't happen. Please, there must be some way to get over this. I don't want to see my friends suffer because of this," Mary said. "Bullshit, Mary. You don't want to see me like this, but on Saturday you were okay with me suffering. You stood there while all this was happening. I was hurt, and you ignored it. Friends don't do that. We're not friends anymore." In my mind, these two were just as guilty as all the other bastards. I was formulating a plan for a little revenge. It was only necessary to lure them. I have no doubt that if someone had said something, it wouldn't have happened. You both could have said something to your husbands. It might have caused an argument, but it might have saved my marriage. It was time to give them some hope. I just don't know if there's a way to even the odds, as you say. I'm not necessarily against the idea, I just don't see how it could be done. What if one of us does this? I stared at Allison for about 10 seconds. What if both? Wait, you want us to even the odds? Asked Mary. I can't do this. Paul will kill me if he finds out. Of course I understand, I replied sarcastically. The man who held me while my wife cheated on me. I understand everything perfectly. I'll do it, Allison said. We both looked at her in surprise. You're right, it's partly our fault. I can't do that, Mary said, and it's not fair to put me in that position, Henry. If Allison is willing to help, that should be enough. No, I replied. The hook was hooked. All that remained was to pull them to the surface. It's either both or nothing. I think this is where we start to bargain. I don't want to just even the odds. I want to tilt them in my favor. Mary sat for about 2 minutes, thinking about the situation. The longer she thought about it, the more confident I was that I could pull it off. If we do this, will you forgive Katie? If you don't, then I won't even consider this possibility. You won't tell Paul. I won't say a word. It wasn't entirely a lie. I didn't plan to tell him in words. When? I'm going to take a few days off. I have a room at Motel 6 until Wednesday morning. I plan to extend it until the weekend and then decide whether to go home or find a new place to live. Damn, I can't believe this is happening, Mary said. Welcome to my world, I said sarcastically. Look, if it's that bad for you, just forget about it. That's not the point, Henry. I like you, and you're a nice guy. If I weren't married, I'd be with you in a heartbeat, but I'm married. You're making me cheat on my husband. Mary, I'm not forcing you to do anything. I know. Okay, if it helps you get over what my husband did, then I'll do it. It's his fault. If it weren't for him acting like an idiot, I wouldn't be in this situation. As far as I'm concerned, let her rationalize it however she wants. It will help me get revenge on her bastard husband, so I don't care. Okay, meet me in my room tomorrow night. At 6 o'clock, I'll order something to eat and buy some wine. Both women got up from the table and walked away, talking to each other. They didn't seem particularly happy about tomorrow night, but they didn't seem particularly upset either. Was I the only one who took marriage vows seriously? I know what you're thinking. Here's a married man planning a date with 2 married women, all while talking about the sanctity of marriage. From my point of view, she cheated on me. She did this by disrespecting and humiliating me. She has already ruined our marriage. I am no longer obligated to honor our vows. All that remains are formalities. As for the women I was going to meet, they and their husbands were partially responsible, so let them roll. I have never understood those people who, after their spouse's betrayal, continue to talk about the sanctity of marriage and so on. I always believed that if you were cheated on, then you were allowed the same. I understand that she did not intend to intentionally cheat on me, but when her place in the poker group was threatened, it was not a difficult decision for her to make. Yes, I acted like a creep. Yes, she needs help with her addiction. The problem is that she won't ask for help until she hits rock bottom. Perhaps divorce will be her rock bottom. The next day, Tuesday, I returned home, making sure Kathy was not there, and took even more of my things. It was difficult to walk through the house and see my whole life there, knowing that everything would soon change. Every time I started to get sentimental, I imagined her on her knees in front of Mark. Angry emotions were still simmering, so I didn't take anything that would remind me of her. I took some of my electronic devices, your laptop, iPad, camera, and some basic tools, some clothes. I planned to start looking for an apartment after I left and return later for the rest of my things. In fact, I didn't want that much. I left the house and went in search of an apartment. In a nearby city, I found an inexpensive, furnished one-room apartment with the possibility of monthly rent. I could move in any time after Saturday. After signing the contract, I had lunch and got ready for the evening with the girls. I went to Best Buy and bought an Apple SD card reader and a dozen SD cards. I also bought the cheapest color printer that prints wirelessly and then went to the liquor store and bought a couple bottles of wine that I knew Mary and Allison liked. I went back to the motel and scattered my things around the room to make it look cluttered, then set up the DSLR camera so she could see the bed clearly. In a room littered with things, the camera was not noticeable. At 15 minutes past 6, I ordered some appetizers from a local restaurant, and they arrived just before 6 o'clock. At 6:15, there was a soft knock on the door. I looked through the peephole to make sure they were girls and not some angry husbands. I wasn't afraid of them, I just didn't want to be caught off guard again. I walked over and turned on the camera to record video. I invited the girls in and offered them wine. At first they refused, but soon decided that a little alcohol would give them courage. Girls, we don't have to do this. We can just drink wine, eat, and just hang out. You both know I would never force you to do anything you don't want to do. I know, Henry, Allison said. You're such a good guy. It's a shame Brian isn't like you. Katie is really lucky to have you. Mary and I have been talking about this since we left yesterday. You were right. We failed you when we stayed silent. Our inaction was, I'm really sorry we didn't say anything. Yeah, well, I appreciate it, but I'd like to know what I did wrong. What the hell do you mean by what did you do wrong? Mary, I find it hard to believe that Katie suddenly decided she could cheat on me. If she was willing to do it while I was there, then she probably did it before when I wasn't there. I'd like to know that I didn't do it in a way that would make her think it was normal. Henry, I truly believe that nothing like this happened before Saturday. These things cannot be hidden. The truth always comes out. She didn't know how true this was. Okay, handsome, Allison began. At the risk of seeming too impatient, I'll go first. Stand at the foot of the bed and stay still. I did as she said, and she took her place in front of me. Okay, I'll undress you. Stay calm. No hands. I want to do it myself. Mary sat down on an office chair near the desk and smiled widely. I wondered if they had done this before. Mary was in the perfect position to get everything on video. I leaned over and gently kissed her forehead. Great, Allison, just great. We sat down and ate a little of what was delivered and drank some more wine. While we ate, we talked again about what happened after I left Larry and Sandy's house on Saturday night. Allison started first. Well, you were there when Katie saw the cards on the floor by Mark's shoulder and accused him of cheating. At first, he couldn't even talk because of all the glass he had on him. He was afraid that shards of glass would fall from his hands into his broken nose or mouth. Mary continued, You should have seen his face. When the ambulance arrived, which took a few minutes longer than it should have, they were finally able to get his hands off his face. His eyes were starting to turn purple. He looked terrible. By the way, what happened to I'll go meet the ambulance? Allison asked with a smile on her face and her voice, trying to imitate me. I replied. I guess I forgot. Well, unfortunately, he survived anyway. Mary continued. Well, he started telling everyone that he didn't cheat, and that Katie still owed him pleasure, and that he was going to kick your ass and stuff like that. Mary took the floor again. Katie said she would never pay his bet unless he could prove he wasn't cheating. I interrupted Mary at this point. So, if Mark could prove that he didn't cheat, she would still honor the bet. The girls were silent for a moment, then Mary continued speaking. I'm pretty sure you have nothing to worry about. Pretty sure? Like I said, Mark had hundreds of cuts all over his body. Most were small scratches, but a few required stitches. He did have 2 pretty deep cuts on his private area, both of which required stitches. He was in the hospital until Monday while they took out all the glass. Larry went to the hospital to talk to him. Allison interrupted Mary. Dude, he really got into it with you. He was pissed. He said he'd kick your ass and then not only get the 100 he wanted from Katie, but he'd take her right in front of you. Mary continued. I'm pretty sure Mark won't be allowed to play anymore because he got caught cheating. Larry's really pissed at you too. He thinks you should pay for the closet, and he's pissed because his insurance will now cover his hospital bills. He also wants you to pay for all the things inside the closet that were broken. Mary, give Larry and Sandy a message from me. Tell them that I will only pay if the judge orders me to do so. For this to happen, court documents and testimony will be needed. My testimony will make them think that I was caught in the act in the middle of a sex party, and when I tried to stop my wife from participating, I was illegally restrained by Larry, Brian, and Paul. My statement will include the names of all the participants and everyone who was there. I will make sure that all the neighbors receive copies, as well as the neighbors of everyone who was there. I will make sure that their family members, friends, and work colleagues also get copies. I will make sure that any churches that anyone attended also get copies, and if I can, I will come to the Oprah show and tell the whole world. We sat in silence for about 30 seconds. Then Allison said quietly, "I'll tell him." Suddenly, Mary screamed, "Okay, it's my turn, let's go." "Okay, but I want you both naked." "We don't have to be naked for this," Allison laughed. "I know I shouldn't, but I'm a little confused." "To hell with it," said Mary. "We've come this far, what difference does it make?" She took off her clothes and Allison followed suit. I stood at the foot of the bed again, and this time Mary got on her knees. Allison stood up from her chair and said, "Okay, that's enough." She pushed me back onto the bed. I fell on my back, and they took turns having sex with me. Eventually, she slid down and lay on her back next to me. "So," I said, "have you done this before?" We had our moments. You know we went to college together, right? Well, we shared sometimes. "That's right, Mary," Allison laughed. "Sometimes it's 100 times." Mary laughed too, then said, "Okay, that was fun, but I have to go. Henry, I hope this tips the scales in your favor. Please call me tomorrow and tell me what you think. I really hope you two can survive this. I don't want to lose you as a friend." Allison picked up the conversation. "Henry, we're really sorry we didn't say anything at Sandy's house when all of this was going on. Please call me tomorrow so we can talk. If you want to talk later, call me anytime. Just to be clear, this was a one-time thing. Event, probably." "Likely?" asked Mary. "Come on, Mary. That's all you've been talking about since last night. You know you'd do it again. We just have to be a lot more careful than doing it in front of everyone at a poker game." Okay, I laughed. "We'll talk tomorrow. I'll call you at some point." The girls left, and I got busy with the video recording I made. I edited it, leaving only the sex scenes, then printed out some photos that were very compromising and comfortable for both women. I then transferred the edited video to the remaining SD cards and prepared 9 identical envelopes. Each envelope contained an SD card and some very explicit photos. Although it would have been obvious to anyone who knew us who we were talking about, I cropped the photos and blurred the video so that my face was not visible. I went to bed and fell asleep instantly. I woke up early on Wednesday, turned on my phone, and saw another dozen missed calls and messages from Katie. I didn't listen to them or read them, but I didn't delete them either. I called my boss and said I would take the rest of the week off, then returned home after Katie left for work and packed more of my tools and personal belongings. During lunch break, Katie called me again. This time I responded with a very sharp, "What?" This completely caught her off guard, and it took her a few seconds to realize that I had actually answered the phone. "Oh God, Henry, don't hang up. Where are you? Henry, we need to talk. We can get through this. Please talk to me. Where do you live? Please come home so we can work on this, please." At this point, I interrupted her. "Katie, shut up and listen for a minute. We'll meet on Saturday. I'll be there at 6 o'clock. Let everyone who was at Larry and Sandy's be there except your boyfriend. If I see him there, I'll kick his ass again. He's not my friend, Henry, and anyway, he's not in shape to leave the house right now. You really gave him a hard time on Saturday." "Well, whatever. Saturday at 6. It won't be a party, it will be a conversation. You and your friends will try to convince me why I shouldn't divorce you. I didn't listen to your messages, so be ready to say whatever you want. Tell your friends not to be late. Henry, please don't ruin our marriage over a stupid incident. When's the next poker night? I don't know, why are you asking? You said you wouldn't come again, but you keep asking about next night. See you Saturday. Okay, Henry, I love you. Please come home. See you Saturday. She still didn't understand. She believed that the whole problem was that I had overreacted to what she considered my duty. Pleasing this guy was something like an obligation for her. She just didn't see the whole picture. She sincerely did not understand that she had a problem. It was more important to her to fulfill her poker bet obligations than to honor our marriage vows. She hasn't hit rock bottom yet. The rest of the week passed relatively calmly. I went to Walmart and bought everything I needed for the apartment. Bathroom items, kitchen items, bedding. A lot more things than I expected. I stayed at Motel 6 at night, studying divorce procedures. We had no children, we could sell the house, and each of us would receive about $15,000 when it was sold. We had little debt. Katie and I had about the same salary. Divorce should be relatively easy. On Saturday afternoon, I texted Katie to text me when everyone was there. I didn't want to sit in awkward silence waiting for someone to arrive or having to go through the whole thing all over again for those who were late. At 5:45, she sent me a message that everyone had already gathered and was waiting in the dining room. At 5:55, I rang the doorbell of our house. I know it wasn't the best thing to do. Honey, this is your house. You don't need to ring the doorbell, Katie said when she opened the door for me. Whatever you say, I replied, walking past her. I carried a small duffel bag filled with envelopes as I walked into the cafeteria. All the furniture in our dining room was given to us by Katie's grandmother when she downsized her house. The table was really big and could seat 10 people. There were 4 chairs on each side and 1 at each end. When I entered the dining room, the 3 chairs on the side closest to me were empty. Larry was sitting at the far end of the table to the right, with Sandy to his left, facing me. Next to her, on the left, were 3 empty chairs. To Larry's right, facing me, sat Paul, then Brian, then Mary, then Allison. At the far end, to the left, Terry sat at the head of the table. Katie walked past me and sat down in the middle of 3 empty chairs, hoping to get me to sit next to her. I walked over to the left end of the table where Terry was sitting and said, "This is my seat." Katie said that. Yeah, well, you can sit next to Katie. Katie, play the record on your phone. I think you'll need it in the future. Without saying a word, Terry stood up and sat in the far chair next to Katie. There was now an empty chair to my right, and I placed my gym bag on it. Katie turned on the recording app on her iPhone and placed it on the table. I sat down and looked around at everyone at the table. After an awkward silence, I said, "Okay, we all know why we're here. I'm thinking of divorcing your friend Catherine. If you care about her at all, convince me not to. Terry, let's start with you." Look, Henry, I'm probably the wrong person to ask. My wife cheated on me, and we got divorced because of it. I'm really sorry that happened. Clearly, Terry was not properly prepared before the meeting. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate your honesty. I may have questions for you later. I looked around the room. What about you, Larry? What do you think? It's obvious to me. She loves you, and she's beautiful. Do you think she was a virgin when you met her? No, I replied, but I expected her to be faithful after we got together. Would you be okay with Sandy pleasuring someone? Larry was silent, and Sandy began to fidget in her seat. Being the sarcastic jerk I am, I said, "So how long have you been doing partner swapping?" Sandy's neck turned red and everyone's jaws dropped, except Larry's. Larry looked at me as an enemy, but he didn't deny it. Katie blurted out, "Sandy, seriously." Sandy felt like a dam had broken. "We've only done this 3 times. I don't like it, but Larry does and says we should keep going, but I want to stop. I hate it." "Okay, Sandy," I said calmly. "How about you and Catherine talk about this later? You shouldn't do anything you don't like." You know what? You're just a creep, Larry shouted. I told Katie when she started dating you, and it turned out that you couldn't play poker, that you were a creep, and that she should dump you. She should have broken up with you a long time ago. You destroyed thousands of dollars worth of stuff in my house because your wife did the right thing by paying the bet. Maybe I should just destroy all the things here. Go ahead, I answered calmly. All this furniture was given to your friend Catherine by her grandmother. For me, it doesn't mean anything. Larry sat back down, breathing heavily and glaring at me. Paul, Brian, maybe you could give it a try. Look, man, Paul began, neither of us want our friends to get divorced. I mean, your friends. I interrupted him. No, Paul, you are not friends to us. You are Catherine's friends. I just happen to be her husband. But you're friends with my wife, he said. I thought I was making friends while she stood there silently, while you three held me so my wife could please another man. But Mary didn't do anything. It was us. I glanced at Mary and Allison, who both had their heads down and were looking at the table. I thought that this conversation was clearly not going the way they expected. Riddle me, Paul. You walk into a bar and see your friend Brian's wife in the corner, kneeling in front of another man. What will you do? Will you watch, call Brian and hope he gets there in time? Or will you stand between them to stop her? Or how about this? You walk into a bar and you see Brian in the corner and he's about to have a blast. What will you do? Call Allison. See, I already know the answers to all these questions. If it's Brian's wife on her knees, you'll intervene and get her out of there to tell Brian. If it's Brian who's going to have fun, you'll sit down and watch, maybe even join in. Allison would never know from you because Brian is your friend and Allison is just his wife. Say, Brian, are you saying I'm wrong? Brian was silent. You see, the problem is that Katie is your friend and I'm not. If Katie does something against me, you won't care because I'm just your friend's husband. If I hadn't walked into that room, no one would have said a word to me. You'd all be like, okay, now it's allowed. Next time, I'll be the one to make that bet with her. I turned to Katie. When did you stop respecting me? What? Darling, never. I respect you more than any man I've ever known. When was the first time I told you that you could do that to another man? Well, never, she answered timidly. How many times has this already happened before last week? What? Never. Why are you so surprised by this question? Why should I believe you? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, would you have told me? You would have waited until we got home and said, hey, honey, something funny happened at the poker night. Or would we just go home and you'd give me a sweet, juicy goodnight kiss after pleasuring me? That's the problem, Katie. You were willing to put our marriage on the line, but not your place in the poker group. I ended up in second place to those idiots. I can't accept that. I glanced at Brian and Paul. You idiots knew that Katie's place in the poker group was more important than her marriage, and you encouraged her instead of talking sense into her. I looked at Brian and Paul and said, do you think you'd enjoy watching your wives have sex with another man? They grinned, looked at each other, then looked at me. Paul said, will she get paid for this? Mary's jaw dropped. Not wanting to be left out, Brian added his own line. Will she learn anything new? I just smiled. When's the next poker night? There was an unintelligible whisper in response. Then Brian asked, wait, do you still want to come to the poker nights? No, I replied. Katie, when's the next poker night? I don't know. Why are you asking this? You said you wouldn't come again, but you keep asking about the next evening. Okay, that's enough. Here it is. I grabbed my duffel bag and took out all the envelopes. I was going to break up a few marriages today, but you know what? I think they're already doomed. I put the envelopes back in the bag and put it back on the chair. Katie, you tore my heart out, and you actually asked your friends to hold me while you did it, and you still don't think you did something wrong. You not only cheated on me, you humiliated me without a drop of regret. For you, your place in the poker group is more important than me. The worst thing, Katie, is that these people are not your friends. True friends would never let you do that or let you do that. Katie started interrupting. No, no, no. Darling, you are the most important. Quiet, Katie. It's my turn now. You didn't even apologize for this. All you did was try to make me understand that you need to pay your dues. You kept saying we needed to get over this, but you didn't never admitted that she did anything wrong. Even after all this, you still plan to continue going to poker nights. If you're willing to gamble on sexual favors when I'm around, what are you willing to gamble on when I'm not there? You have to raise someone else's child because you lost the bet and someone else impregnated you. We're done. You have a gambling problem. I'll contact a lawyer on Monday. If you want, you can hire a lawyer too. Me, you can take almost everything, including your lousy friends. You're such a creep, Brian said. Shut up, Brian, Allison said to everyone's surprise. Everything he said is true. You all gave a damn about his marriage to Katie for your own entertainment. He was ready to drive you all crazy by saying that I slept with him, and I don't know why he didn't. You know what? I'm tired of your crap. Henry, can you give me a ride? There was another awkward pause for 10 seconds. Then Mary spoke. You know what, Paul, said Mary. I agree with her. I'm tired of being the only one who behaves responsibly in our relationship. Henry is right. You don't even sit next to me. Before all this mess, Henry idolized her. I always wanted you to treat me like he treated her. I hate as hell that you helped ruin that. She continued, Henry, last Saturday when this happened, I was just as shocked as you. I really thought it was some kind of sick joke because I was so sure how much she loved you. I'm so sorry. I didn't say anything then, but maybe it's for the best that you found out about it now, before you had children. Can you give me a lift too? We left the house, leaving Katie crying nonstop, Larry and Sandy arguing about swapping partners, and Paul and Brian telling their wives, if you don't come home today, you don't have to come back. Both girls walked out with their middle fingers raised high. I took Allison and Mary to Allison's parents and returned to Motel 6. I drank the remaining alcohol in the room and ate the rest of the fast food I had bought earlier. Finally, around midnight, I passed out. The divorce process went without any problems. We sold the house, and she put all the furniture into storage. I took everything I wanted from the house, which, oddly enough, wasn't that much. Allison and Mary were both separated from their husbands, and the three of us remained friends with benefits. I never heard from Katie again. In fact, I was disappointed. I thought she would fight and maybe try to force me to go to counseling. Apparently, I was right when I thought that our marriage never meant as much to her as it did to me. Although there was no romance between me, Mary, and Allison, we became really close. A year has passed since that ill-fated bet. I was sitting at the bar that Katie and I used to go to on special occasions. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. I sat there feeling sorry for myself and still missing Katie. Sitting, sipping beer, and staring at the wall, I felt someone's presence behind me. I continued to stare at the wall, hoping that whoever it was would go away. I really didn't want to talk to anyone and was hoping that if I didn't pay attention, the person would just go away. Is this seat taken? I lowered my head and looked into my beer. No, it's free. Sit down. It's amazing that such a nice guy is sitting here alone. Well, I have 2 amazing friends that I usually hang out with, but they're on a double date. Yes, I also thought that I had amazing friends. It turns out that my friends are not so wonderful. I accidentally met 2 girls who said that there would be a hot, lonely guy with a very kind heart sitting here. I decided to come here and meet. My name is Katie. I chuckled a little and kept the game going. Nice to meet you, Katie. I'm Henry. Why are you here alone? Are you celebrating something? No, there's nothing much to celebrate. I'm a complete failure in relationships. I couldn't stop my wife from cheating, so I got divorced. My 2 best friends, who, by the way, are women, are now with other guys. What about you? Yeah, well, I guess I'm a loser too. I had the best boyfriend in the world who loved me with all his heart, and I hurt him the most I could. I cheated on him, and he divorced me. Did he do the right thing? For him or for me? Let's start with him. I don't know. I think I should ask him. People I talk to who know him say he's unhappy all the time. I see. What about you? It's a tough question. When he divorced me, it was the darkest period of my life. It made me take a hard look at myself. I didn't like what I saw. I started going to therapy for my addiction and have been going ever since. My wonderful husband saw this happening and tried to warn me, but I didn't believe him. I think in this sense, my addiction would have killed his love for me in any case. I never stopped loving you, Katie. I just couldn't. I couldn't. I know, Henry. I understand. First of all, it's so nice to hear you call me Katie again, or just Katie instead of Catherine. Look, I came here to explain myself and assure you that you're in no way wrong. I know you understand this logically, but I just had to tell you this. That Saturday at the poker game, I was absolutely confident that I would win that hand. When I lost, I was shocked, but determined to pay the bet. I didn't even think about it as sex or cheating. It was like I was betting on a handshake. I was terrified of the thought that I would be kicked out of the group. I didn't perceive it as a bet on my marriage because I never thought. That you would leave me was not even a consideration. I thought that you would be angry, but would eventually forgive me because I had to fulfill my obligations. I was sure that you would understand that I had to keep my word. I honestly didn't think it was a big deal at the time. And now I see it as the most evil, vile, disgusting, painful thing I have ever done to a person. At that moment, I could not believe that you were so unreasonable. When I started therapy, the doctor asked what happened. When I told her about our encounter and how you made me record everything, she called you a genius. After she listened to the tape, she said that she was surprised that our marriage lasted so long. She also explained why. You kept asking when the next poker night was. Just so you know, there were no more poker nights. I haven't picked up cards since that night, and I never will. I haven't talked to any of those people since. It's been 2 weeks since we met. How's Sandy doing? She's fine. She and Larry got divorced too. Turns out he was an abusive jerk, and she was too embarrassed to talk about it. She finally decided to break up with him. She's now dating a guy from work. Henry, you were right about everything. I put that stupid poker group above everything. I loved you with all my heart, and I knew you loved me the same, so I was sure that you would understand and tolerate it. If those people were really my friends, they would never allow it. I just couldn't help myself. I needed to be part of this group. I let that bastard Mark do what he did, and I wouldn't even love him. I can only imagine what those games would have turned into. I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. I sincerely wish you the best in life. You deserve it. I would love to be your friend, but I understand if you don't want it. I'll go before I start crying like a little girl. Call me if you want. Katie stood up and headed towards the door. Hey, Kat. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Yes, Henry. Have you had dinner yet? I saw her shoulders shake with tears. No, Henry, not yet. She still didn't turn around. I stood up and walked over to her, put my arm around her shoulders, pressed her head to my shoulder, and began to lead her to the door. Come on, let's have dinner together. Katie and I started dating again, and within a few months, we were moving in together again. 9 months later, we got married again before a magistrate on what was our previous wedding anniversary. We decided it would be easier to use the same date as before. Katie kept her word and gave up gambling completely. She doesn't bet on anything anymore, not even as a joke. I know that many will say, once a cheater, always a cheater. I don't believe this applies to Katie. I believe her addiction led her to do things she would not have done under normal circumstances. I assessed her actions by intention. Her intention was not to humiliate me or find a better lover, but to satisfy her addiction. The guys in the band are still friends with each other, with the exception of Terry, and tell anyone who will listen that they were the ones who left their wives, although they can never come up with a good reason. I never heard anything from Mark. I guess he didn't want to continue the conversation. Last I heard, he left town. Katie and I are still friends with Sandy, Allison, and Mary. Sandy also gave up poker. They will all be our son's godmothers. Yes, Katie is pregnant with a boy. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one.